How's it going, guys? Welcome. It's great to have everyone here. Remote drone operations. It's a topic that's been at the forefront of everyone's conversations. Can everyone hear me? I just want to double check that if I could get a couple of yeses in the chat. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Sweet as. So, remote drone operations. It's been a topic that is the forefront of everyone's conversations. Great to see such reactions, guys. We actually just got back from the Australian Association for Uncrewed Systems down in Canberra this week. Interestingly enough, how big is your area approval seems to be the barometer of success in the industry. But fear not, we're giving away the crown jewels here to get you on that pedestal. But first, as I mentioned there, it's great to see such interest from various industries and drone operations, such as police and emergency services, government agencies, utilities, the mining industry, defense, educational institutions, service providers, and many more. So for today, what we're going to run through is we're going to obviously a quick introduction to ourselves. We're going to run through what is BVLOS, Beyond Visual Line of Sight Operations, the road to BVLOS, how can you get there both from an operator level and then also from an organization level. Some of the challenges of remote operations, an introduction to our own solution, HubX, the HubX R&D journey, and then also a walkthrough of our platform from a software and hardware perspective. We'll leave some time then at the end for a couple of Q&A sessions. And then since I'm talking, I'll kick off. My name's Cian. I've been emailing and calling a lot of you already. So I lead the conversations from a sales perspective for HubX, and I've been with Sphere Drones now for the last year. I'm going to pass it off to Paris, who's going to do his own introduction, and then to Elliot beside me.
G'day, how you going? It's Paris here from Sphere Drones. I'm the CEO and founder. I'm very excited to be here with you all. Just to give you a background, the business started in 2012, and today, as we stand, we've got the best part of 40 plus employees across the region of Australia. Awfully excited to be here with you all, and we'll look forward to sharing a lot more around what it really takes to break down those barriers, especially from a Beyond Visual Line of Sight stance. Love to hear. Elliot, over to you, mate.
Thanks, Paris. Hey, everyone. I'm Elliot from Sphere, of course. So I'm the chief remote pilot here, and I've been here for, I think I'm employee number one that's kind of walked in and got a drone and a job and stuck around. I'm part of the furniture now. So, but yeah, it's been an interesting ride. We're really proud of where everything's gotten to with the current state of play. So I'm excited to share some more stuff with you all around the BVLOS and HubX and everything. So thanks for joining, everyone.
Perfect. Just to give you a bit of an introduction to Sphere Drones here, we've been in operation for 10 plus years. We've over 75 bespoke CASA approvals. Interestingly enough, with a recent BVLOS approval as well under our belt. We both have a hardware and a software aspect of the business. And on our software aspect, we have over 3,000 drones under management. And in our time in operation, we've trained over 660 plus customers.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Cian. So I guess from my side, before we get stuck into the nitty gritty of it all, it's good to get a bit of an understanding as to exactly what is BVLOS as opposed to the traditional visual line of sight operations. So visual line of sight is exactly that. It's operations where the remote pilot is on the same location as the drone, and they're operating the drone within their line of sight as an individual. So they're able to see and orient the drone at all times and all stages during flight, which basically presents a known quantity for the regulator and for operators, and provides that kind of level of safety and assurance that everything's all going to go as planned. In terms of the other categories that are kind of halfway in between, we're not going to go into those too much today, but there are EVLOS Class 1, EVLOS Class 2, and Beyond Visual Line of Sight as well. So there is a bit of a transition period that's available there to kind of go from one step to the other without taking too big of a leap. But in terms of what we'll be focusing on today, it'll be Beyond Visual Line of Sight. And so Beyond Visual Line of Sight is where you can't see the drone anymore with your eyes, so you're not able to see and orient it anymore. And you may be using other systems, processes, procedures, and planning, etc., to ensure that you are still conducting a safe operation. And so one of the big differences between Beyond Visual Line of Sight compared to some of the others is the use of trained observers. So being able to conduct Beyond Visual Line of Sight means that you don't necessarily need to use a trained observer, which is quite advantageous not having to have someone sitting out in the hot sun. It can be quite brutal here in Australia. So yeah, in terms of that side there, the last piece of the puzzle is that, of course, it does require a site-specific approval for BVLOS. So visual line of sight, you don't necessarily need to have an approval to operate in a specific area unless there are other requirements like controlled airports, etc. EVLOS, Class 1 and Class 2 don't necessarily have a site-specific approval, but a beyond visual line of sight is area-specific, so that's what you need to get with the regulator. So in terms of the road to beyond visual line of sight, so of course, as an individual, one will need to get a remote pilot license and then look at getting their instrument rating exam theory pass or their outside controlled airspace exam. So that's the alternative to IREX. It's a little bit of a simpler exam to just kind of streamline things a little bit if it's something where you don't need the full capabilities that are available to you if you're getting an IREX. So if you're not operating in controlled airspace and you're not needing to consider aircraft quite so much, that's where the OCTA can be a little bit more advantageous, and it's less aviation focused, that exam. It's more kind of drone specific. From an organisation standpoint, the remotely piloted operating certificate is of course a big requirement. So the organisation will need to have that with the chief remote pilot, a maintenance controller, etc. Involved there. And then, as you can see, that visual line of sight, extended visual line of sight, and BVLOS are the kind of the stages that are often considered when people are kind of going on the journey. So in terms of the BVLOS consideration, I guess there's a few extra parts that come into the equation. So by buying a drone in a box and getting a REOC, it's not necessarily something where you've crossed the finish line and you can just start operating. There's other factors that go into it before you can get really functional remote operations. So there's things like the drone system itself is an important part of that ecosystem, of course. So the right drone in a box is really important to ensure that it's appropriate for the task, the environment, all the other considerations for that operation. Things like your internet connectivity, system redundancies. Having environmental sensing on board is really important too, so that that the drone's within tolerances, etc. Having that situational awareness of both the ground around the drone in a box or the situational awareness from an aerial perspective as well. And then also air traffic management, so understanding if there's aircraft that are flying through the air in your vicinity. It's important that you kind of have an understanding of what's going on there. We're just getting some comments from people that they can't hear us. That was a few minutes ago now, but could I just get a hand raised from, there's a few people who are getting no audio. Jan so that's so we've got a few people that can hear us. Maybe we just need to check the settings on your speakers. Yeah, cool. So I think the people who can't hear us, I think it may be possible that you need to just allow GoToWebinar to play audio through your device, or maybe the audio is playing through a different device, perhaps a headset or something. But we'll continue on. If you can't get the audio working, we will have the recording available off the back of the session anyway.
The issue is that those people can't hear that.
Yeah. So maybe anyway, one of the Sphere team could just share that message in the group chat. That'd be great. So, but in terms of where we were, of course, the air traffic management is an important part of being a responsible drone operator and ensuring that you're allowing other airspace users to operate safely and effectively in that area. And then the other BVLOS consideration there, of course, is the remote operations center itself. So ensuring that you've got all of the right processes, hardware, etc., set up in that remote operations center for effective operations. So in terms of the what's involved in the requirements for a live site, so of course one of the main things is understanding the environment that's going on there. So having that technology there to support your situational awareness effectively is the crux of it. So having that ability to understand the air risk and the ground risk, etc. But I guess from our side, we've been keeping a close eye on the developments in the drone in a box technology space. And it's really clear that it's not just a matter of buying that drone in a box, setting it up on site, and off you go. So you need the host of ancillary equipment that we've going to be talking to later in the presentation for communicating amongst themselves, as well as giving you that information. So the operator needs processes and equipment to address the air risk and ground risk to ensure that the environment is safe to operate for both the RPA and those on the ground and using the airspace. So we've scoped out the requirements to complete a remote operation firstly from a compliance perspective, and then secondly from a technology perspective. So the tech stack there, we've got from an ARIS perspective, we've got the ADS-B antenna, and that provides that insight as to what piloted aircraft might be in the area, or other ADS-B using devices, uncrewed systems that might have an ADS-B out on board, and also an airband radio, so that you can actually communicate with the people who are using that airspace as well. So if someone comes into your area and you want to communicate with them and say, okay, well, we can see that you're coming through. Oh, you're going to stay at that altitude, no problem. We'll have that kind of safe clearance, etc. From a ground risk perspective, having those cameras is quite important to ensure that you've got that clear ground around your area, but then also being able to see, if you had a drone deployed on site and being able to tune in and see that there's a fire going on somewhere else on site, you might be able to see the smoke and be able to send the drone to it a little bit more effectively. So. And then from an infrastructure perspective, we've also got the environmental sensors, so that you do have that temperature, humidity, wind speed, and direction, all that sort of stuff on site. And then in terms of connectivity, we've of course got a Starlink set up on the HubX as well, but the cellular system that we have allows it to have an automatic failover system. So in the event that you lose a cell carrier, as has been seen a couple of times in the last little while, it does have that ability to automatically switch over to that extra carrier, so that you can have that operational certainty. And then in terms of the remote operation center, as I mentioned before, having the appropriate human-machine interface is really important. So making sure that the remote pilot can actually be comfortable for longer duration operations, making sure they've got all the information correctly displayed and not obstructed by any other windows and things. So all that sort of stuff kind of feeds into it as well. And then having the redundancies to ensure that if your computer dies because of a power failure, having that kind of operational certainty there is really important too. So that's pretty much it from me. Paris is going to go into a little bit more detail about our Beyond Visual Line of Sight console shortly, where we'll kind of demonstrate our deep integration between hardware and software so that you can conduct remote operations. But I think the next step is for Keen to...
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. Great explanation of BVLOS, the technology and some of the requirements to get to that stage. Now, I said we want to keep it interactive, so we're going to flash up a poll question here. And I suppose a lot of people are going down the path at the moment of BVLOS and drone-in-a-box operations. Here, look, we'd love to know, what are organizations struggling with the most when it comes to implementing drone-in-a-box technology? Is it the complexities of integrating the technology and understanding what's required, like we just went through there? Potentially the upfront investment of getting all the required technology together, the regulatory compliance of a drone-in-a-box, and that opaque nature of what it could be, or is it stakeholder buy-in? So while you could be in one facet of the business, how can you make multiple facets of the business benefit from it? Okay, again, quite an interesting selection of answers here.
So we'll leave this poll open for a little bit longer, guys. We're just waiting for a few more people to tick the boxes. Don't be shy.
Unless, of course, you have a wrong answer and you're going to affect my data.
If anyone does have any other answers that are not necessarily in that box and that's holding them back from answering, feel free to shoot them through from a question perspective, and we can have a conversation with you guys about it later.
Perfect. Okay. Well, here, look. We'll end the poll there. You know what? The biggest thing that people seem to be struggling to deal with is CASA, or the regulator, sorry, and how to progress with that. But here, look, we're going to push on, all right? So remote operations, challenges, limitations. So as you can tell, drone-in-a-box is a very small factor of it, and we just kind of realized that through the last poll that we just answered. Early adoption of drone-in-a-boxes was like the gold rush. People saw the ROI without seeing the sensors, the business case, or even the regulations behind them. We've come from essentially a Wild West type scenario into a place where this technology is now possible. But still, it's important to realize why it didn't take off in the first place. So cost. From a cost perspective, it's not just as simple as taking a dock off shelf and putting it in a remote location where away you go. It's also looking at developing or integrating technology for it, getting contractors out to implement it, and then the project management and then the time associated with it. And one of the biggest issues then is actually developing the infrastructure around it. So when I'm talking about infrastructure, it could be concrete pads, fencing, cameras, environmental sensors, but then also, quite importantly, power and connectivity. So from a technological constraint perspective, obviously drones have increased so rapidly in the last couple of years. We're looking at drones that can fly for 7 minutes, 10 years ago, up to 50 minutes right now. They didn't have the right sensors previously, and now they do. The use cases are just growing and growing. But while this is happening, at the same time, regulation is also progressing. We've progressed from having a requirement of an IREX exam now into the OCTA exam, and also people are pushing the envelopes with their BVLOS approvals, which is great to see. Another huge issue that we've encountered, and this is from talking with industry, is people have struggled with the thought of actually implementing it at a fixed location. And what do I mean by that? Projects change, mines change, environments change. And once you actually implement it at one location and you can't move it anymore, it can be a bit of a kick in the teeth if you're trying to uproot it and move that location again. And then in terms of limited autonomy, the flight planning software wasn't there, but that's fully developed now. We have object detection systems which enable these remote operations. So it hasn't been a secret. I'm sure our marketing team has gotten to you. We spoke to industry, conducted a host of interviews to find the biggest pain points around remote operations. And after multiple iterations, integrations, and ideations, we're proud to present HubX. The concept is more about the operation and less about the drone. And when we're talking about operation, it's about the systems that enable BVLOS operations. But in saying that, it's always nice to mitigate some of the big ticket items, like the capital cost of acquiring and integrating technology and the time and cost associated with that, but then also the infrastructural development at remote sites and the time and stakeholders to get it in operation. Our main concept when we're looking at this is de-risking drone-in-a-box implementations with a solution that streamlines the process of BVLOS. So obviously when it comes to CASA and dealing with that, this mitigates a lot of the issues through the integrations. But here, look, it's a solar-powered portable drone-in-a-box trailer with a fully integrated tech stack from hardware to remote sensing. To cap it off, I'm going to pass it over to Paris, who's going to walk us through some of the development journey, how we got to where we are, and a bit of a product demo from our software side of things. But here first, before I give it over to Paris, I just have one more question. And, want to know, where are you in your drone-in-a-box journey? So is it simply investigating use cases, deciding on a course of action for implementing the technology? We've got a pending BVLOS application. We've got BVLOS approval, or we need a support partner. And I can see there's a couple of raised hands in the chat, guys. We can actually answer some of the questions at the end. So if people want to start posting in questions into the chat, our team can correlate them for us and relay them back to us, and we can answer them in the Q&A session at the end. Okay, we'll just wait another couple of seconds there, guys. Some shy people there in regards to answers, so make sure you get clicking. Okay, I think we're good with that one, guys, so we'll end that poll there. And I'll pin this again, and I'll pass it over to Paris, who's going to bring us through some of the development journey.
Thanks, Keen. Really appreciate that. So just to preface the development journey, so it's been quite an awesome product to be a part of. For us as a group, 40 plus employees. The left-hand side of our business very much works with customers, supporting them on a day-to-day from an operations perspective. But the other 50% of the organisation works in amongst our hardware and software engineering suite. So what does that mean? In and amongst our group as an organisation, mechatronic engineers, software engineers, IT architects, aviation specialists like Elliot, RX qualified employees, have all shaped what HubX is here today. As Ken mentioned earlier, we've interviewed the best part of 25 plus customers from various mining and utilities organisations to understand what it really takes to operate a drone in a box and an autonomous drone on the site. Outside of the Civil Aviation Safety Authority landscape, I guess there were some clear outcomes that were articulated on the back end of what that was. And those clear outcomes were off-grid mobility, connected in nature with redundancies alike. Comprehensive interfaces, there was a lot of customers that had various interfaces, 4 or 5 interfaces just to operate one drone system. And then the last but not least is a solution that mitigates risk to deployment on the site. So I guess when we look at what we've engineered, for us, our business has gone down the path of designing a rolling chassis, being an applicator of VIN numbers with the Road and Maritime Service, and then establishing what it will take to host all these devices. So when we start looking at some of the devices accordingly, obviously the dock itself has a power consumption rating of 600 watts when charging, an air conditioning unit that sits inside the hub that cools all the IoT devices, consumes around 400 watts, and then the watchtower itself consuming another 200 watts. Accumulating that to 1200 watts, we've then designed and architected a rolling chassis and a canopy to be able to support all those devices. So all in all, you've got 4 or 5 kilowatt hour batteries to support the storage component, taking it to 20 kilowatts of battery storage, and a 2400 watt solar system. So we've taken the logic of what it would take to keep your home off grid and applied it to what we call a rolling chassis and built it so that the weighting category and all the compliance functions of roadworthiness are applied. Additionally to that, we've provided provisions specifically for the generators, for a generator if required. But all in all, if there's absolutely no solar whatsoever, the system can sustain operable for about 5 days with no solar whatsoever. The whole journey has gone through a research and development process where we have now eventuated with a patent pending architecture of it. I do have another poll question that I do want to ask before I jump into the demonstration. And if we get to the next slide, for many organisations, they wanted to understand, how we're going to get the single source of interface. And I'd just love to understand who has got experience with various platforms, whether it be AV-Surround, Fly Freely, Flightbase, FlightHub, Drone Logbook. Just wanting to understand a little bit more about the audience and their applications and use cases. But, thank you very much. And just to preface, what's gonna happen after this is I'm gonna take control of the screen and be able to demonstrate, I guess, a lot more around HubX. The engineering feat it definitely has, and be able to show you what it really takes to really centralize a bunch of tooling to improve the adoption process of drone in a box technology. So just wait a couple more moments whilst some stakeholders jump on and answer those questions, but we'll jump in just a moment. Hey, we're good there, Ken. Thank you.
And
so as I said, we're going to
stop sharing.
Yeah, beautiful. As I said, what we're going to go through now is we're going to go through a little bit more of a demonstration of the hub. Now, the hub, as we know it, is a pretty well self-sustaining system. Has been working on a bunch of, has been operable across a range of different customer bases. And just bear with me whilst I open my system preferences and allow GoToWebinar to. Yep, I need to quit and reopen. Of course I do.
Here, Paris,
Bear
can
with
you do
me,
that?
and I'll let. Yeah, just
Myself
bear with me.
and you will take care of some of the questions while we're waiting for you to hop on. So, guys, hang on there. It's quite interesting what we're going to go through.
So while Paris is rebooting the old turn it off and on again trick, essentially one of the questions we've had come through is around whether it's necessary to do extended visual line of sight before doing BVLOS, and it's not necessarily something where one has to do EVLOS first at all, but it does certainly help with being a sort of a stepping stone towards the BVLOS side of things. So in Australia at least, you don't need to do EVLOS first. But there are some lessons that can be learnt and some skills that can be picked up, which are helpful towards your BVLOS journey. And it might even be something where, from a deployment perspective, you want to get going really, really quickly. And that's where EVLOS can be that kind of bridging period while you're waiting for an approval for BVLOS. If you do have a more complex approval, that might take a little bit longer. So,
and again, to play into that, obviously we have a BVLOS approval, and one of our things is willing to meet you guys where you are, and if it means getting set up through some sort of managed service, and then we transition you across, that's something that's capable as well. But Paris is back on.
I thought technical difficulties, but we're back. So HubX has been deployed amongst various sites now. I was fortunate enough, as you can probably hear by Kean's accent, he wasn't necessarily a local at the start of the year, but started last year, but he's very much is a local. We've travelled together for the best part of the last 8 months, I could call it, putting this trailer through its paces. We've driven around 7,500, 8,000 kilometres. Is that right, Kean? Something about that?
Something around that.
Too many. And too many Ks. So taking it from there, what we've done is we've been able to cultivate a lot of feedback and really what it takes to deploy this. So what I'm going to present to you guys today is 3 visualizations. So the first one is what we call our field service application. The second one, which we call our analytics platform. And then the third being our flight management tooling. So again, our field service, our power and analytics platform, and then the third being Kiro, our software platform. So before we start with that, our tooling itself has been integrated with the Civil Aviation Safety Authority and Air Services to be an integrated airspace tool. So when we look at working collaboratively with government, for us, we actually integrate very closely with the Civil Aviation Safety Authority as part of a safety application. Now, I just wanted to preface that. Now, when we look at all the different devices that we integrate with, there's the best part of 16 devices that we work with very, very closely. Now, when we mean integrate, we've integrated all the APIs accordingly, and we understand what it really takes to operate these technologies from a day-to-day operation. Now, when you roll up the trailer to site and you go to set it up, it's almost pivotal to make sure that the drone and the actual hub itself is completely steady. So what you'll see here on the bottom left-hand corner of the trailer itself, there's corner steadies. Internally within the trailer, we've got what's called an IMU. So the IMU is the inertial motion unit. That IMU itself allows us and provides us the opportunity to absolutely level the trailer out. Additionally to that, for all of us that know, with drones and with other devices, IT devices, a traditional way of turning things on and off. Have you turned off your computer and turned it back on? We've integrated that sort of concept in and amongst the day-to-day operation of the hub. Now, being able to flick on and off the devices accordingly is very, very pivotal. So when we look at the next side of it, the system itself has an embedded modem that is a bonded cellular modem, takes 4 SIM cards, 2 Optus, 2 Telstra, and a failover service to a Starlink. Now, we were actually on site quite naturally during that Optus outage, and the system handled it quite well, performing mission-critical missions on site. and the system upheld the bandwidth. With those 4 SIM cards, what it allows us to do, it allows us to cut the bandwidth up and then disperse it over the network. We talk about redundancy in and amongst our aviation side of things, and it's quite critical for Elliott's Beyond Visual Line of Sight operational tooling. That's a very, very pivotal tool. We naturally, within the system, completely have what we call a temperature map. And that temperature map, they're independent temperature systems that sit within the power and the data compartments. I can trigger the aircon unit to start blowing, and that aircon unit will start to cool down the devices accordingly. Similar to the air conditioning system, it has a battery management system as an entire tooling. At present, the system's sitting at our office undercover, not exposed to any of the weather at present. But we know for a fact that the IoT compartment's consuming a power consumption, the DJI dock's consuming a level of power. And what this allows us to do is allows us to track and manage. And as I said earlier, as a complete self-sustaining system for about 4 days with no solar, is that this system can last, which is really neat. We track all the analytics around the power consumption. I'll show that in a bit later on. Additionally to that, it's got a fully functional.
Sorry, Paris.
Okay.
Could I just say there? I saw a question pop into the chat there, and it actually relates to it. So naturally, Australia is quite a sunny location, but in the advent of when we don't have any solar, the question was, can you plug a generator into it, right? And there's capability bars to plug a genset into the front and manually.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. And happy to answer any of these questions as they come along, so Ken, feel free to jump in and shoot my way. But in totality, we're able to plug grid in, so whether it's actually 240 out of PowerPoint or it's a generator in the front end, we can sustain that. There's future part of our roadmap where we actually embed a genset in the rear end of it. We've got a lot of room sitting there to support that. But all in all, the system is built to sustain the Australian climate accordingly. We've got a weather station built into it, temperature, humidity, wind speed, wind direction, also a lightning detector. The lightning detector actually correlates to a map visualization as well. That map visualization will take a second to load, but you'll see there the hub and its operation. We obviously don't want to be operating in conditions, and part of our process and procedures of our manual operations, we actually dictate some of these items in and amongst that environment. It's got a Trimble GNSS base station. Obviously, it's sitting underneath the concrete pad, but just to show you, we're able to access the Trimble GNSS viewpoint there. It's got the R750. That's there for 2 purposes: post-processing the data and the upcoming drone in a box Dock 2, for example, but then also supporting our in-trip correction, so that if we do move it, we don't actually need to pick up the dock's location at any point in time. I'm going to jump over to our analytics platform. So I've just shown you our field service. This field service application is mainly used for when we're setting up the device, making sure it's level, making sure the device is on, and if we need to, we can go in and turn things on and off accordingly. But what I'm going to show you now is our time series database. Now, from the get-go of our development journey, we really wanted to understand the factors that influence HubX's performance. And this was one of the first systems that we actually went away and set up, just so that we can understand. And this is, for example, a time series where we were out in the field at the start of January, just as we got back from holidays. But what you can see here, for example, is a solar input. So we were inputting around 2.24 kilowatts of solar, and the rear and the front solar panels were, generating anywhere between 895 and 870. In totality, you can see the charge levels as the time progresses. We're really pushing it through its paces as to how many flights you could get. It also gives us analytics insight as to around the temperature of the outdoor environment compared to the indoor environment, hence why we've now integrated an air conditioning unit to level up that. We've got wind speed, wind direction, and then also average wind speeds. When we look at it from a compliance lens, it's really, really important to be able to have all this data under the one roof.
And
now, it's in my...
a compliance perspective, it's, the whole concept of drone in a box operations is that you put it in a rural, remote location and set and forget. You're not going back there next week. So you need to have continuous data about your location to understand the environment and see what's happening in regards to charging and so on.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. And a last thing is, as time progresses and we get more systems out there, the aggregation of this data service for stakeholders who have multiple units on site. We never know what the opportunity may lend to. Like, we've had thoughts from customers saying, oh, you could set up your own cores network because you've got R750s that are established all across the network. You know, you can provide comprehensive weather monitoring tooling, but then also other data services. We've had customers that have also been interested in embedding some of their other sensors, so vibration sensors specifically for anyone that's doing drill and blast, for example, oxygen and methane detectors, all those sorts of different sensory devices. So I've shown you HubX's setup page, I've shown you the analytics page, but really what I'm going to do now is go into Curo, our software platform. This is our cloud service. Now, as I identified before, Curo is integrated with air services and understanding the airspace around us. And as you can see there, it actually gives flight advisory based on whether you can or you can't operate accordingly. But really, as a 100-foot view, similar to the likes of Avery CRM, Fly Freely, Drone Logbook, the system tracks, manages all the record keeping relational requirements for piloted drones. But really, we pinned our ears back on what is it going to take to operate drone in a box and autonomous technology. Now, it is in my personal belief that there's two types of compliance platforms. One for remotely piloted aircraft, where you've actually in visual line of sight and in complete control of the record keeping requirements. And then one where you've got a drone in a box that's automatically operating. Obviously, right now today, there's an important factor. We've got a beyond visual line of sight operator that sits in a remote operation center operating it. But the future holds complete autonomous operations. And where we've really stuck out and pinned our ears back for is having that complete comprehensive oversight of the system. So for us as a business, we've integrated all the flights from a drone's operation. You can see here the drone itself, the pilot itself, the batteries that we used, all within that operational area. I can give you an example. Our team themselves, this is their digital CV. You understand their entire flight history, their recent operations, incidences, all those sorts of details, trainings accordingly. But even all the way through to the drone. Now, the drone itself has the total amount of flights, the total airtime, your next major service, your minor services, operations, incidences, as a complete record-keeping environment. Which leads us to an operation. An operation obviously has your risk assessments associated with it, and then any participants that are involved in it, and the flights that are according. So part of the system, there's also embedded checklists and those sorts of things. This is the environment that we very much call our RPA manager and our operations environment. So what I've shown you there is our asset and asset pilot and operational list, but really where I'm really excited to show you more about is what we call our BVLOS console. So similar to what I showed you in our field service app with the weather data, you can actually see our weather data in a live in situ state. And right now, HubX is sitting at our office, and you can see that there. You can see the team walking around in the background. I don't know who is there, or if they're listening to the webinar. I might get a wave of hands or something like that. I don't know if they're online, but you'll see here the wind speed, wind directions coming through in live state. We've got access to the PTZ, and I'm going to open up the dock itself on another environment, and I'll be able to show you some of the things, part of our processes that we're looking at investigating. So whilst the dock's opening itself, you've got the ADS-B data that's sitting here. We integrate the ADS-B antenna that's sitting internally within the trailer itself. I think Will is out there right now. That's him right there. That Will? Yeah, there you go, mate. Thank you, Will. So you can see here, this is the ADS-B data. You can see all the air traffic's coming through. We have the mission manager down below and then the dataset manager. So when we start looking at what are we doing within Curo, we're doing everything from managing the flight, the operation, the user, the pilot, the drone, the operation assessment, the checklist associated not only for the deployment and the pre-flight checks of the drone itself, but then also for the hub. You have the mission manager, and the dock accordingly. Within within the management of the PTZ camera, we're working on automated workflows of the system itself. So, for example, looking at the batteries, so checking how the batteries are performing. Are the batteries performing well? Checking out propellers. Are the propellers okay? Each of the propellers. Going to the next one in a second. Checking that the propellers are okay. Is that frozen for you guys too? Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, the joys of a live stream.
Joys of the
But
live
again,
stream.
guys, what we're showing you here is as a BV loss console is essentially, what's required to monitor the local environment, but then also the situational awareness around an operation. So in terms of operations and 3 screens that we've shown you, and I saw a question popping up there, is this an internal tool in terms of our time series database for us to monitor the hub? The answer to that is yes. That's for us to understand, the health and the operation and what kind of maintenance needs to be done. The second screen that Paris showed, which is the field service app, that's what we use then to actually set up HubX. So when we go into the field and we need to see what's actually on, what's off, what's not working, and then also how to level it through an IMU, that's how we use this one. And then from a pilot's perspective, this is where you'd live in. So as a pilot, you come in here, you check your local airspace, check your situational awareness, and then your environment. One of the biggest issues is, at a local operation is understanding rain, wind speed, is it safe to operate, lightning, for example.
And I'm not sure if Paris mentioned it before, but you can actually see on the screen here, that's the ADS-B feed that's showing us the aircraft that are in the area, which is critical from an operational standpoint to have that awareness of, how your drone might be interacting with other airspace users. And, so being able to have all of that information visualized in 3D is really helpful to be able to get a better picture of, where your drone is compared to where they are. So, yeah, hopefully that kind of sheds a bit more light there.
I'm
Yeah.
going to finish off my my section here, guys. So just coming back to it, like for us as an organisation, we're on the path of establishing a mission planning software. But really, what we've been able to develop and engineer is a tooling that allows us to import what you call a .kmz file, upload it to a mission, send it to the dock, and deploy it to the dock. So when the dock is operational and flying, the actual ADS-B and the dock will all integrate in this single traffic management tooling, you could call it. So all in all, when we start looking at, and there you go, the propellers there ready to go, so you can just see it there. But all this tooling works in coincide. Now, I saw there was a question earlier around, does it integrate with Starlink? Yes, we've got a Starlink there at the bottom of the screen here. You can see the Starlink that's mounted on the edge of the trailer itself there. But all in all, we bring those flights, the missions, the operation, all the telemetry data associated, allowing us to establish the mission, but then also be able to visualize a data set and a data set that has been uploaded based on our mission that we've flown. Okay. Now, for us, we call that entire process the operational framework. And that operational framework allows an organization to start what they really need to focus on. And we identified before that people are still looking at the use case element. We want the customer to focus on the use case element. We want our system to take care of that entire operational framework accordingly. But if there are any questions, happy to answer them accordingly. I see that there was a question around, will it integrate quite easily with the dock too? I just want to explain the dock itself is a crane off of an system. We've designed it to be completely agnostic. At the very, very top, it has the capability of taking 2 docks, so it provides power for 2 systems, provides network for 2 systems coinciding. So happy to answer any questions as time progresses. Ken, I'll probably hand it over to you, mate.
Perfect. Thanks, Paris. Thanks for bringing us through the software. And again, what I want to emphasize is the way we've developed HubX is, and I mentioned in the presentation, is very little about the dock and more so about enabling remote operations from a sensing perspective. So if you can remember in the presentation, there was an analogy we used of getting to the finish line and then goals have actually shifted. So that goal shifting is the technology interpiece. So that's where HubX fits in to enable your remote operations. But here, look, we're going to have a look at some of the questions that Elliot's taken down. So
I've got a couple that I can answer if we want to get started with those.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the, so let me see. So there's been a couple of questions here from Isabella. So hi, Isabella. So in terms of the costs around BVLOS and the wait times, etc. So there's a lot of subjectivity to that. Unfortunately, I can't give you a perfect answer there, but effectively there's a basic BVLOS approvals cost that is an estimate, and then at the end of it, you're kind of there might be a remaining amount. So if your assessment was particularly complicated, there might be some additional expenses at the end. Or if it wasn't particularly complicated and it didn't take very much time, then they may possibly give you a refund in some instances. If you have a particularly complex BVLOS application, then it may be something where it does take a bit more time and cost a little bit more. But if you've got a bit more detail around the specifics on what you're looking to do, we'd be happy to have a chat with you about that one. And of course, it's always going to be subject to some extent to the workload of the regulators and things too in that regard. So, but there are some things you can do to try and make things a little bit easier and get them through more quickly. So there was another couple of questions that I've got here. So around the 5G question. So that's around whether we're using 5G for control. So at present with the DJI Dock series drone in a box, they actually utilize a radio communication link between the dock and the drone itself. So there's not a strict need to have 5G on site specifically, but it is something that's on our roadmap to kind of review is how the use of other communications systems and protocols might interact with the HubX. So rest assured we're keeping our eye on that one and looking at that one.
I'm seeing an interesting one here from Sarah Baxter. So can you give some examples of real world use cases you've designed HubX for? And again, to emphasize, we designed it for enabling remote operations, but in terms of use cases, when you're looking at drone in a box, mining, survey, for example, asset inspection, security patrols, agricultural patrols. I mean, anything that you can do with a current drone, but you want to do it in a remote location. Any place that's hard to reach and you have an ongoing project where there's a requirement for reoccurring data, essentially that's what HubX can be deployed to. And it just streamlines the process. You don't need to create the infrastructure or the data flows. It's already done, fully integrated, set up in 30 minutes, ready to go.
There's been a couple of questions around the logistics and practicalities of the DJI Dock itself, but it does apply to more like to other drone in a box solutions as well. So with the DJI systems here, they do take off and fly around, come back, land, and charge. So there are some systems that will actually change batteries over and things, but it is something where, as Paris mentioned, being able to have potentially two docks installed on the HubX is something that might allow the ability to do more uptime, if that makes sense, rather than having to wait for the drone to come back in and land. But it just depends on the task that you're looking to do and what those reasons and rationale is behind why you need to be up in the air 24/7. And then I guess as well that there are other solutions around that might enable kind of better uptime if necessary. But if you let us know what your use case is, we'd be happy to have a look at some solutions that might be appropriate for you.
Okay. Does the drone have ADS-B out at all, or does the trailer have that?
So, I was going to take that one unless you wanna go.
I'm a bit of a pro, no?
Yeah, you can go.
So ADS-B out. So no, we take ADS-B in. Typically, CASA doesn't want ADS-B out from drones at the present, but I'm seeing that it is on our potential roadmap, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the main thing to be mindful of is that if every drone does have ADS-B out installed on the drone, then that could possibly cause some interference for airspace users if they're getting unnecessary notifications that aren't relevant to them. So it is something that CASA at this stage, from what I understand, is kind of only really wanting people to start utilizing ADS-B out if there's a specific reason, like maybe perhaps operating inside controlled busy airspace or above 400 feet, or areas where there might be interactions with other piloted aircraft users.
Sweet. So I'm seeing a question around the drone in the boxes. So what you can imagine HubX is essentially it's a portable remote operation center that enables BVLOS operations. So we've designed it to be dock agnostic. What you can think is power in, Ethernet in, operations. Now we focused on some of the DJI products, but that doesn't mean that we could scope it for other products in that regard.
I can see that there's a question here around the Australian-made components. So in terms of the different parts inside HubX, it's something that we'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you about that one. It might be something that we take offline rather than go into the technicalities and nitty-gritty in today's session, but we're happy to have a conversation with you about that one off the back of it. In terms of, there's a question here about, oh, sorry, go Paris.
No, I was going to say there's a question here around can we add a CB radio to the HubX to communicate with the people on the ground at a site? So funny enough, my father's business is in two-way radio and communications. We're a Motorola and ICOM distributor, quite naturally. So we definitely can and definitely will. It's just part of identifying what it is. So like we're operating the system on a mine site more recently, and communicating to the people that were sitting within that bench area that, hey, the drone's about to take off, is something that we can most definitely automate as part of the process and definitely have as an integrated system. But yes, that is something. And just to answer again, HubX has been completely designed and engineered here in Australia. It's manufactured locally in Botany, New South Wales. And yeah, we'll continue to do so. For us as an organisation, we integrate with various products from all different parts of the world. So we lean on, for example, Trimble, the GNSS base station, whereas it's manufacturer of record, so on and so forth. So look, we can talk about, as Elliot said, offline, but it's a system that's been completely manufactured here locally in Australia.
Thanks, Paris. There's another question here about the airband VHF. So I think in terms of the airband radio side of things, there is certainly an airband radio incorporated into the trailer here. That's actually running a radio over IP setup. So it does mean that we can, make broadcasts from our HQ here in Sydney and be able to broadcast, wherever the drone in a box is. One of the other interesting functions that we've got is actually pre-recorded. Paris, I don't know if you want to go into that one briefly.
Yeah, I can go into it briefly, but ultimately, because we are connected to the system in totality, right, we've got complete understanding of the takeoff location, the takeoff distance, the trajectory, the heading, and also all the correlated flight traffic around us. We're working on a process at the moment. We've naturally called it airband.ai. But what that does is connects the airband radio to our edge compute that sits inside HubX, and reports on all the related data points. So Wagga Wagga traffic, i.e. when we're operating in Wagga, it references Wagga Wagga traffic. RPAS operations are not above 400 feet, so bringing that from our operational assessment database. Operational for the next 15 minutes, bringing that from our flight time, Wagga Wagga traffic, and then we can repeat that as an automated broadcast every 15 or so minutes or 5 minutes, whatever that interval needs to be accordingly. And simultaneously, we can also work alongside deconflicting aircraft. So Romeo Echo Bravo Zulu India, RPAS operating below 400 feet, and then signing off accordingly. So we've been able to integrate like an edge compute automated text to voice functionality on the basis of our systems integration. That's just an example.
Awesome. Thanks, Paris. So what else have we got here? We've got a question about the maximum size. So at the moment, we do have quite a nice big bay available for various different size docks, etc. So depending on the drone and the dock that's being requested, just let us know what you're looking at, and we can have a conversation about how that might interact.
So originally the HubX was designed and engineered to host two DJI Dock 2s. If you're just to give you an idea of footprint, we're waiting for a Dock 2, waiting from our friends from DJI at present, and we believe that we could potentially fit up to 3 systems. But obviously wanting to be a little bit more conservative. So we're very confident about the 2, the third a maybe. So.
Yeah, and then I suppose there was a question there about operating time and uptime. So if we, for example, 2 docks on there, that would ensure constant operating time. And I'm seeing one there, what's the maximum operating distance? That comes down to the dock itself. The current DJI dock is rated for 7 Ks. CASA, in the eyes of CASA, you got to peel it back to 80%, so that's 5.5 Ks. And then we have some assumptions about dock 2, but again, it's going to be 80% of whatever that is.
Yeah, and there may be ways that you can potentially stretch that distance a little bit, but yeah, in terms of the numbers, it also depends on the site that you're on, the terrain, all that sort of stuff. So there's a few other factors that go into it, but again, have a conversation with us about your specific use case and if there are specific environmental requirements on your site or why you want to go.
And where HubX really plays into it, guys, is we're talking about issues. All right, fixed locations is one of the issues. So HubX is a trailer, pack down 30 minutes, pack up 30 minutes. Get your area approval, and then just operate within that area approval while moving HubX around.
And just as a point of interest, one of my colleagues has just shared with me that the dock can cover 11,400 hectares. So, it's something where if you need to be able to cover a large amount of area, then, it does give you that capability to cover a fair whack of space with the dock. So, yeah. But again, as I said, if there's anything in particular that your team are looking to do, let us know and we can have a conversation about it. Night vision question on the cameras. Paris, do you want to take that one? Oh, we've got you on mute, sorry, Paris.
Yep. Sorry about that. So at night we've got a floodlight that lights the area up, which still enables the 360 camera to operate in totality. But the actual PTZ camera itself is an IR-based camera. So at night it goes into what we call guard mode. So it enables to monitor the surrounds of the environment on a consistent basis. There's other things that we're working on integrating at the moment, things like alarms and audibles. So when people are getting close, using AI to say, hey, drone is about to open, or hey, get out of the area, or hey, you're being monitored, or something along those lines. Still working through the paces of that, but all in all, I think it's quite unique. But yeah, there is night vision in and amongst the capability of the camera suite that sits on top of the hub.
Awesome. So it looks like there's a couple of people that have to head off because we've obviously hit that 3 o'clock mark. So Paris, from your side, what are you able to stick around for a few extra minutes, or do you need to head off?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good for a few extra minutes. I'm not sure I'm sure there's more questions we could go through.
Yeah, and guys, feel free to fire the questions in. Obviously, the issue about BVLOS is that it's opaque in nature, and what we want to emphasize is we've been through it, we've done it, we've integrated all the systems. If you have questions on it, and granted, some of them might want to email private questions, but feel free to post them in the chat. Again, what we want: education, informative, other people to learn and come along in it. It's great for the industry, right? So feel free to share the questions.
There's a question here around are there extra antennas on the dock to increase the distance? There's no extra antennas actually embedded in HubX or the dock. There has been sightings in amongst the online network of extenders, so to speak, but it's not something Sphere Drones has enabled or embedded in amongst our system. We very much honour the OEM and their objectives with their product.
Awesome. So guys, we're just having another look through here in terms of some other questions. I think I've answered most of those questions there.
You got how long does it take to get a CAPTCHA approval?
So I think I might have touched on it before, but it really does depend on the complexity of your operation. It also is something where if you've done a BVLOS application before, then it might mean that you're able to get that second and third BVLOS approval through a little bit more quickly. But it really does come down to the complexity of your operations and how well prepared one's submission is. If it's something where it takes a long time for you to answer questions from CASA, or if there's things that need to be tweaked and adjusted, etc., then it is something that could possibly take longer to get that one closed out. But yeah, they can be quick if it's a well prepared application.
See, another one there is, can you rent Hubex? And yes, you can. Make sure to talk to me.
Awesome.
Okay. Is there a new question?
I think that's pretty much it for the moment, unless we get any last-minute stragglers. But look, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Oh, hang on, we've got another couple come through.
So, what kind of packages do you offer?
Actually, that's a good question. I missed that one from you before. Sorry, Isabella. So, in terms of the processing time for a BV loss application, it is something where you're probably looking at around that kind of 30-day mark as a minimum. Potentially, a couple of months or more potentially, depending on how complex your approval is. Generally speaking, with BV lots applications, one would generally submit. Your question before was around the length of operation, and it's not really something where you would necessarily submit a BV loss approval for like a single day's operations, for example. So it is something where you would generally request a longer period, and that validity period, I think someone else asked it, now that I think about it, the validity period of a BV loss approval is generally set for the last day of your validity of your REOC. So if your remotely piloted operating certificate has an expiration date of say 2025, it might be the first of March 2025, then your BV lots approval would expire with your REOC. And then when you renew your REOC, you can then potentially renew your BV loss approval as well. And so that might just be something where you can kind of rinse and repeat and get that approved quickly again. But yeah, in terms of the turnaround time and the validity periods, I think that ticks a couple of questions off there as well.
Okay, I see and there. Yeah, so we offer a managed service and a license where you can operate this on your REOC, streamline that. Does Curo come with a copy and paste doc? I'll leave you look at that one, Elliot.
We'll get back to you on that one, Leon. We'll have a conversation offline.
BV loss. What are the steps involved?
So in terms of the BV loss OCTA certification, it's a test that you can do on you can book it in like any other CASA aviation exam. There are some courses around that will kind of help prepare you for that. In terms of sorry, we closed that one for you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of the cost, it's quite inexpensive. The study material, I believe that the courses that are offered for it provide you with all of that sort of stuff. But again, we'll probably pick that conversation up with you offline, Dinesh.
I think the exam itself is quite cheap, actually.
Yeah. The exam itself isn't necessarily inexpensive.
It's about 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it's not. So IREX is typically a relatively widely accepted as one of the tougher exams in aviation. So it is something where if there is an ability to leverage the capabilities of an OCTA exam rather than the IREX, great. But there are some circumstances where IREX is a valuable exam to have, and if you've got that ability to spend a little bit of extra time and effort on doing that, then it's definitely worthwhile.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I think we can probably wrap it up there if there's no other questions or comments that anyone has from our side or from the guest side. But thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure, guys. Great to connect with industry and maybe not converse with you because we talked to you for an hour. But here, look, don't be a stranger. Reach out to us. Would love to continue on the conversation. I see Gavin is asking a question, or maybe he's raising a hand. But here, look, thanks very much, guys. I'm sure we'll talk in the coming weeks. And have a great rest of the day / weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
We'll stick around for just a bit longer in case there are any stragglers.
Yeah, perfect.